The animal officially went extinct in 2011. That is not my opinion. That is the finding of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, published on the 2nd of March that year, after a review that pulled records from 21 states and every provincial wildlife authority in eastern Canada. The eastern cougar, they concluded, had been gone for at least 70 years. The last one anybody could account for was shot in Maine in 1938. There was another in New Brunswick 6 years before that. After 1938, nothing. 7 decades of silence, and then a federal agency putting it in writing. So when a Kentucky fish and wildlife officer walked into a farmyard outside Paris, Kentucky, in Bourbon County, on the 15th of December 2014, and put a bullet into a cougar that was sitting in a tree, the official position of the United States government was that the animal he was looking at could not exist. I want to tell you what happened to that cat after it came down out of the tree, because the shooting is not the strange part. The strange part is what the state did with the body, and what a man who spent 30 years measuring these animals said to me about the tracks he was finding in the hollows, off the record, with the recorder off, in a voice that had gone very quiet. His name does not matter for now. He asked me to keep it that way, and I am going to honor that. What matters is that he was a state biologist, and that he had been doing the job long enough to know exactly what he was, and was not allowed to say out loud. Let me start at the beginning. Not his beginning. The animals. The record is clean until it isn't. For most of the 20th century, the story of the mountain lion in the eastern United States was a story about absence. They had been here once. Every early county history in the Appalachians has its panther story, the scream in the night that sounds like a woman being killed, the calf dragged off, the bounty paid by the county clerk. Kentucky paid those bounties. So did Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, the Carolinas. By around 1900, the paying stopped because there was nothing left to pay for. The cats were gone, hunted out, trapped out, starved out when the deer went. The forest that had held them got cut to the stumps, so the official record settled into a shape everyone agreed on. The eastern cougar was extinct, or as near to it as made no difference, and any big cat somebody swore they saw crossing the road at dusk was a bobcat, or a large dog, or a house cat seen from too far away, or a lie. That was the shape of it. Bobcat, dog, or lie. If you called the state and told them you had seen a mountain lion, that was the menu they handed you, and you picked one whether you wanted to or not. I have talked to a lot of people in these counties who called the state exactly once, got handed that menu, and never called again. Keep that in mind. It matters later. Now here is where the clean record starts to come apart, and I want to walk through this carefully, because this is the part the state does not enjoy talking about. In June of 1997, in Floyd County, Kentucky, a car struck and killed a mountain lion kitten, a real one, a body on the shoulder of the road that you could pick up and put in the back of a truck. The state tested its DNA. The finding was that it had South American ancestry, which meant, in the official reading, that it had come from a cage. Somebody's illegal pet escaped or dumped. A zoo animal that got loose, not a wild survivor. And that became the second item on the menu. Bobcat, dog, lie, or escaped pet. For 17 years, that held. Then came Bourbon County. The man who owned the farm found the cat first. It was a Monday, the 15th of December. Cold, the light already going the way it goes in the middle of a Kentucky winter, which is to say, early and grey, and without much warning. He had a dog that would not stop barking at a tree. He went to look at what the dog was barking at, and what the dog was barking at was a full-grown mountain lion, up in the branches, looking back down at him. He called the state. "This is the part I want you to hold on to, because it is going to come back around." He did the right thing. He called the authorities, and he waited. A conservation officer came out. By the time the officer got there, the light was almost gone. And here is the reasoning the state later gave. The animal was treed. The dog had it treed. But it was getting dark, and there was a town not far off. And if the cat came down in the dark and went toward the houses, there was no telling. So the officer made a decision. He shot it. The state's word for what he did was dispatched. He dispatched the animal, and then they had a body. A second body, 17 years after the first, except this one was not a kitten hit by a car. This was a full-grown adult cougar in a tree in a county that had not had a confirmed wild mountain lion since before the Civil War. 150 years, give or take, of nothing. And now this. So they did what you do. They took the body for testing. DNA, ancestry, the works. The public wanted to know what it was. Was it wild? Had it walked here on its own 4 feet, all the way from somewhere the cat still lived? Or was it another cage animal, another pet, another item 4 on the menu? The state's information officer went on the record early with an opinion. He said he did not believe the cat had gotten to Kentucky on its own. He said it looked too well fed to be a wild animal that had traveled a long way. His read was that it had escaped or been released. Item 4, a pet, and the DNA results that would have settled it. One way or the other, they were not released. Here is the reason they gave, and I want to be precise, because the precision is the whole point. The DNA testing was withheld while a criminal investigation was underway, an investigation into illegal wildlife trade. If the cat had been somebody's pet, then somebody had broken the law in owning it, and that made the animal evidence in a live case. And evidence in a live case does not get handed to the public or the press. That is a real mechanism. That is not me inventing a conspiracy. A criminal investigation genuinely does lock down evidence, and a genuinely responsible agency genuinely would not release lab results in the middle of one. I want to be fair to the state here. On paper, this is exactly how it is supposed to work, but sit with what it looked like from the outside, in the counties, to the people who had been handed that menu their whole lives. For as long as anyone could remember, the state had told them, "There are no mountain lions here, and if you think you saw one, you are wrong." Then a mountain lion showed up in a tree, an actual physical animal that could not be argued into being a bobcat. The state shot it, and when the moment came to finally answer the question, wild or not, the state said the results could not be released. You do not have to believe in a cover-up to understand why people in Bourbon County and the counties around it started to. The pattern they had lived with their whole lives just repeated one more time, except now there was a dead cat at the center of it and a set of test results in a drawer that nobody would open. That is the standing belief in these hills. Not that the state is lying exactly, that the state knows more than it says, and that when the knowing gets inconvenient, the drawer closes. Now I want to introduce you to the biologist, because he lived on the inside of that drawer, and he told me something that has not left me since. I met him through a third party, someone who trusted me and vouched that I would keep a name out of it. He had put in 3 decades with a state agency, and I am going to stay vague about which one, in a region that runs down the spine of the Appalachians. His whole career was the physical stuff. Tracks, scat, hair snags, the measurements. He was the person they sent when somebody's calf got opened up in a way that a coyote does not open a calf. For most of his career, he told me, the answer was always the same, and the answer was always no. No mountain lions. He believed it too. He said that for the first 20 years, he would have bet his pension there was not a wild cougar east of the Mississippi that had not walked out of a cage. Then, he said, the tracks started. Not many. That was the thing he kept coming back to. Not a flood. A few, spread out over years, in the wet ground, along the creeks where a track will hold its shape. And the tracks he was finding, he told me, were the right shape for a cougar. Round, 4 toes, no claw marks, the particular lobed heel pad that a dog does not leave. He knew a cougar track. He had seen enough of them in books and in the West to know one on sight. What bothered him was not that they were cougar tracks. What bothered him was the size. He walked me through it the way you walk a student through it, slow, because he wanted me to understand that this was not a feeling. This was a measurement. A mountain lion's track, front foot, runs somewhere around 3 inches across for a good-sized adult tom. Big cat, big track, 3, 3.25, and out west, a real monster of a male might push toward 3.5, and you would talk about it for a week. That is the top of the range. That is the cat you tell stories about. The tracks he was measuring in the creek bottoms were bigger than that. Not by a hair. Not the kind of difference you argue about. He said he found himself doing the thing you are trained never to do, which is doubt your own ruler. He would measure a print, get a number that did not make sense, walk back to the truck, come back with a second ruler, and get the same number. He said he stopped writing some of them down, not because he forgot, because he did not know what to do with a number that was not supposed to be possible, in a place where the animal was not supposed to be at all. And then there was the deer. He got called out to a kill, a white-tailed doe, in a hollow off a creek he named for me, and that I am going to keep to myself. The doe had been fed on and then covered, the way a cougar caches a kill, dragged brush and leaves pulled over it to hide it from scavengers and come back to later. That part was textbook. That is exactly what a mountain lion does, and it is one of the ways you tell a cougar kill from a coyote kill or a bear kill. Coyotes do not cache like that. It was a beautiful, clean piece of evidence, and it told him a cougar had done it. What it also told him was where the deer had started. He could read the drag. The doe had been killed in one spot and moved to another, and he paced off the distance, and the distance was wrong. A cougar drags its kill, sure, but there is drag, and there is what he found, which was a full-grown doe moved through brush and up a grade a distance that he said he would not have believed a Western Tom could manage. Not with a deer that size, not up that slope. He said an animal does not do that, unless it is bigger than the animal is supposed to get. He said, and I wrote this down word for word, I have been measuring these cats my whole life. I know exactly how big they get. These are bigger than that, and I am not allowed to say so. I asked him the obvious thing. I asked him why not. And his answer was not dramatic. That is what made it land. He did not talk about a conspiracy or a cover-up or men in a room deciding what the public could know. He talked about how the machine actually works, which is quieter and in some ways worse. He said the confirmed cats, the ones the state does acknowledge, get explained the same way every time. They are dispersers, young males from the Western populations that have been slowly pushing east for decades, walking astonishing distances looking for territory and mates. That is a real thing, and it is documented. In Tennessee, the state confirmed a run of them starting in 2015, a trail camera in Bourbon County, a hair sample in Carroll County that came back matching the genetics of cougars in South Dakota, a whole cluster in Humphreys County, camera after camera, through into 2016. Every one of them, the record says, a traveler from out west, a young cat that walked halfway across the country and ended up in Tennessee. Normal-sized, traceable from somewhere else. And that framing, he told me, is the draw. Because if every cat is a disperser from the west, then every cat is normal. And if every cat is normal, then a track that is not normal did not happen. It got mismeasured. The biologist made an error. The number that does not fit is the number you leave out of the report, because the report is about dispersing western cougars, and a bigger animal is not part of that story, and there is no box on the form for the thing you cannot explain. He was not forbidden by anybody. Nobody sat him down. It was simpler than that. There was just no way, inside the system he worked in, to write down bigger than it should be, and have it survive to the next desk. So it did not get written down. So it did not happen. He said the ones we have confirmed are the ones that fit the story we already tell. He let that sit. Then he said the ones that don't fit, we don't confirm. And he stopped talking for a while. I have gone back and forth on that man for a long time. I want to be honest with you about that, because I think you deserve honesty more than you deserve a clean, scary story. Everything he told me about the system, I can check, and it holds. The 2011 extinction finding is real. The Bourbon County shooting is real, December 2014. And the withheld DNA is real and was withheld for the reason given. The Tennessee dispersers are real and the South Dakota genetics are real. The framing he described, where every confirmed cat is a normal Western traveler and anything that does not fit that shape falls out of the record. That framing is real too. You can see it operating in the public documents if you know to look for it. What I cannot check is the tracks. I did not measure them. He did, and he is gone from the job now, retired, and the notebooks where he wrote down the ones he did write down are his, and he would not show them to me, and I did not push, because a promise is a promise. So I am left where I do not like being left, with a man whose account of the institution is verifiable in every part I can test, telling me about a part I cannot test at all. And the part I cannot test is the whole reason I drove out to see him. I will tell you the last thing he said to me, and then I am going to tell you what I found afterward, and then I am going to stop. Because after that, I do not have anything for you, but the same question you will have. We were standing by my truck. It was getting toward dark, the way it was getting dark in Bourbon County 10 years ago, when a man's dog would not stop barking at a tree. He had been quiet for a minute. Then he said that the thing about a dispersing cat, a young Western male walking east looking for territory, is that it is looking for territory because the territory out west is full. The cats are pushing east because there is not room where they came from. And then he said, territory is only worth walking 1,000 miles for if there is something in it worth staying for. I asked him what he meant. He said a lone young male does not make tracks like the ones he was finding. A lone young male is a normal-sized cat. You get a track that big, he said, from an animal that has been eating well in one place for a long time, not a traveler passing through, something that got here and stayed and grew and had reason to. He said, you do not get big off of walking, you get big off of staying. Then he shook my hand and went inside, and I have not spoken to him since. Here is what I found afterward. I went back through the records for the counties he worked, the confirmed sightings, the trail cameras, the DNA hits. And the confirmed record does exactly what he said it does. It runs hot for a stretch, cameras and hair samples and a body, and then it goes quiet. In Tennessee, the state has not confirmed a sighting since 2016. The cameras stopped catching them. The record just, at a certain point, stops. The official reading of that silence is the reassuring one. The dispersers moved on or died, the way lone young males dispersing into unfamiliar country often do. The cats that walked in walked out again, or did not survive. And the record went quiet because there was nothing left to record. That is the likely answer. I want to say that plainly. That is probably the answer. But there is a second way to read a record that goes quiet, and the biologist put it in my head, and I have not been able to get it out. A record goes quiet when the animals leave. A record also goes quiet when the animals get good at not being seen. A cat that is passing through gets photographed because it does not know the ground. A cat that has been in one hollow long enough to grow bigger than the books say it can nose every camera in that hollow and where the wet ground is that will hold a track, and how to walk the ridge instead. I do not know which one it is. I want to be clear about that all the way down. I do not know. What I know is that the animal officially went extinct in 2011, and that a man who spent 30 years with a ruler in his hand told me the tracks in the creek bottoms are bigger than the animal is supposed to get, and that when a real one showed up in a tree in Bourbon County, the state shot it and closed the draw on what it was. The deer, he found, had been dragged farther than it should have been possible to drag it, up a grade, and then covered over with brush so it could be come back to. Something covered it. Something meant to come back. I have not been back to that creek. He would not tell me its name, and I have decided I am not going to go looking for it. Some drawers you leave closed.